all in one system. Great. We have all three basic types of media in here. We have our filtration, we have chemical, biological, and mechanical. We have our mechanical here with this screen. So sometimes they have filter pads, sometimes they don't, but that's going to help just take out the larger particulates. And then we have our fun biological media, which is the fluidized bed that has these glass beads where all the bacteria is going to be cultivated. And you can help cultivate more bacteria if you're moving some old media into a new system. And we have our chemical filtration here with your large carbon bags, which can be taken out. This system is not glued, so you could just take out an entire kind of media here, but be careful because there's still suction coming from the pipe down here, so if there are any larger particulates or anything, it goes straight into the pump here, and the pump will go straight into the UV, and then we'll go run over top into the external riser and then straight into all the manifolds. But if you let that kind of stuff get in the pump, it can wear out the impeller and heat up the pump and burn it out nice and fast. And these pumps can last a while if they are properly maintained. The rest of it is basic, the same as your other system. So
I will say that some of our people have not ever received the training on that
Perfect.
system either, so let's start from like cluelessness.
Okay, cool. I'll leave the UV until last, but firstly we have our controller here, so all of the plugs. We have our FBB pump, which is the filter pump, which is going to move all the water from here into the fluidized bed media, and you can see the media kind of bubbling up, and that's what's going to help get surface area and cultivate bacteria. We have the heater back here as well, and then there's also a separate pump, or there's also a separate switch for our rack pump, which is going to be this pump right here, which goes to the UV and goes to the racks.
Are they labeled?
Yes, they're labeled at the bottom. Unfortunately, there's not labels on the bayonets, but you can just
What is it like?
trace. So bayonet is kind of just a different type of plug. So it's going to screw in
Oh, I see.
and stay
okay.
secured right there.
Yes,
versus
bayonet,
just
because
a.
if you took it out, it could be stabbed.
Yes, exactly.
But each of those switches has a label on it.
Yes, yeah. So it all says down here heater, FPV, and filter. So you'll be able to know which is which. What controls them is this float sensor here. And the float sensor actually acts kind of like a dead man switch. So if the entire system were to drain, there's not enough water in here, what happens when there's not enough water? The heater's going to heat up too much, and it can melt the sump. The pumps will run dry, that will burn up the pumps, and you will have to get new pumps. And that's not fun. So what happens if the float switch, the water level goes down too far, it's gonna all shut off. So you see everything there, we're gonna stop getting water from there. This is just residual.
Just interject. One nice thing about the new system is the sump is bigger, and so there's much more room for it actually to turn off. Whereas the older system, the float turn off thing bumps into the filtration systems.
Yep. So you might have to kind of finagle it to get back up and starting. Just move it around, jiggle it a little bit to the side. So it may not start up initially, just move it around. And you can always tell, especially by the sensor here. Thankfully, setting the temperature is kind of idiot proof. I set it to what you've got over here, which is 28.5. So setting it, there's just a set button, which goes to set point. You press it again, and this is your set point. And up and down, whatever you'd like, set point, and then it's just gonna go right back to where it was before. It's gonna set it in the proper. That's what controls our temperature probe over here. And if you want to add any sort of probes, I guess a water level probe would be over here. Any temperature probes, any electrolysis probes, pH probes or stuff, we do have an attachment here. If you buy them from us, it's a PVC pipe, and then it has the probe at the very end. It just snaps right in, so it's real easy. The pumps also have we call them flapper valves. It's a valve that essentially keeps the water from flowing back into the system, because you can have water that travels back into the system and it keeps going and it keeps going, and if the tubes were long enough, they could be sucking up water. Not very big tubes, but we still have them here just in case anything were to happen. Like you could probably suck up some media from there to there if it wasn't working somehow, or there's still some flow, but thankfully not something you really have to worry about. It's always good when you're first learning the system, anything with water that involves fish, animals, just follow where the water's going. Since the input is here, normally you would follow it from where the water comes from, since the input is your own water. Just start from here. So the water goes through the screen, in the filter pump, goes all the way down, and then that water is going to rise up, circulate through the media, get the bacteria, and it's going to go into this section where the water is going to go in through the carbon filters, and the carbon filters are attached to that pump back there. And that pump back there is going to go to the UV, it's going to go up through that tubing, all the way down to what's called the external riser. External riser is just one big piece of PVC pipe with ball valves on the ends of each of them that control the rows. And then that'll head back down here, circulates water. All of your tanks have lids and what are called baffles in the back. Easy to take out, replace. It's just going to stop any fish or any larger animals from going through there. Control of water level is all up to, water flow is all up to you guys. So right now, an important thing when you're first filling these tanks up is to not open them up all the way. So you fill up a tank with everything fully open like this, it's a lot of pressure, and the tank, the baffle in the back won't be able to keep up with all the water that's coming in. So it'll easily overflow and you'll get water all everywhere. So if you're not keeping an eye while you're filling up the tanks, you can have overflow. It'll go back into the sump mostly, but you're going to have wet tanks and then water on the floor, but that's still something to keep an eye on. Also, if you have it too much, it's easy to overflow, but there's kind of an easy way of telling. It's usually about that much, but the water flow could be something like that. So just a slow trickle into the top, really easy to see.
I'll just interject. It is too much more than that. It's hard for the fish to swim against it. There's not
So that's
being in
kind
a
of
hurricane for us, all the wind.
bashing around the inside of the tank, and no one wants that. See, that's what's going to happen if you leave them long all the way. So if I turn them down like that, it's going to work like the rest of it. Water level will go down. But the more tanks you fill up, the lower the sump will get, since you don't have automatic replacement. See, this is our overflow pipe right here. So if the water level gets too high, then it's going to flow into your drain in the back, which I have tapped into. But sometimes if you have too much water flow going in here, the drain won't be able to keep it. And it will flow out the sump. Not something you really have to worry about too much with a smaller system, not the large water supply, but if you look at something like a lot of water supply, you lose track or walk away, you will flood everything. I've seen it, I've done it, it's not fun for anyone, especially since you're on the third floor. So thankfully you have good drainage, but flooding everywhere is never fun. You can adjust the water level through this overflow pipe. It moves like this, like that, and it's not glued into the elbow right here. So if you wanted to get a longer piece of pipe, you can just get a longer piece of pipe and cut it to height. So that's the basics. It's pretty simple. If anyone has any questions or anything else, no? Okay, cool. We will head to the most fun part now. And the most fun part is going to be this UV here. So we want to get the water out of the UV, and it's going to be labeled rack UV pump. We can keep the filter pump going, because the filter is just running to the fluidized bed media, and that's not going to do anything. We can keep the heater on running too. There's still water in there, so it's not going to be too much of a deal. They can drain pretty slow. What I find is nice and really helps speed up the process is closing these manifolds here, which is just this ball valve, and it's got the red handle. So if you close the manifold valves to prevent any back pressure, you can also close the valve to this coily hose, which I forgot to go over, but it's not a big deal. Coily hose, if you want to fill up anything outside of the system, this is all system water. I will drain this so there's less water in the overhead tube. There we go. So you should be able to see if there's any water left in here, which there is some. But that's because it's not draining the best throughout the bottom here. And the best way to drain it from the bottom is all of these. Every hose connection you see will have one of these. It's a little clip. It's got these little teeth on the inside here, so you can close it like that and it'll stick. You can just push it to the side like that and it'll work.
Can you just do that again for us dumb people? Pinch and then okay, slide.
You can also have it like that. You can take like a flathead screwdriver, shimmy it out like that if you're scared or you don't have enough space to
Wiggle. Okay.
Thankfully they're cheap, easy to get rid of, so easy to replace. So you can see there's still a bunch of water in here, which is most likely still from this hose down here. So the best way to do it, best way to drain it is to disconnect this hose here, which also all of these little unions here, they're called insert fittings, are barbed. So that means they're going to hold on to things very well, very tightly. And that's why we put a silicone lubricant on the outside, because you can take them off without it. It just makes it a lot more difficult. So we're going to disconnect it so it's out of the water. Now you can see some of the water drain from the top, from the bottom. Basically just watch it. See, it's draining there. You can watch the top, see the bubbles go. Because if you take it off without, when there's still water in the UV or the overhead hose, then you'll get water all over the floor. And that's not fun for anyone. So we're going to disconnect the top here, and we're going to disconnect the bottom here. And since learning is fun for everyone, who wants to disconnect the top hose? Or the bottom hose? Yeah? Okay, you're getting the top hose.
You're tall enough.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so it can kind of slide down on these clips. So hold it like that, and you can just do this one-handed. I'm doing the clip, so.
You get these hands and you kind of move sideways.
Yep. Move it sideways a little bit till it pops off. There you go. And then you can take it off. Very nice. Put it to the side. And when you're taking this off, take your time. Just jiggle it. It's you don't need to go really fast. You don't need to put too much force into it.
Now I'm taking this part off.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. You're keeping the pipe on. You're keeping the insert fitting on. There we go.
Okay.
Perfect.
I'll just leave that
Easy. Yep. So I'm gonna take off the bottom one now, and then we will. I've done this a lot. There we go. Learning is fun together. There's still going to be a little water, and you're going to have to take it off like this too. So looks good. Get a flathead screwdriver, and you can fit it in. I'll take off the clip after I'm done taking off the UV to show you how to do it. But this is click off, UV off. We're going to set this. I'm actually going to set it here first, because this is what's going to supply the power to the UV, and you're actually, since it's off right now, it's not going to show. But this is going to supply the power to the UV, and the bulb is connected right back here. So you're going to want to gently unscrew the bulb. This is another thing where just take your time. If it's not coming off the way you want it to, then you could just get, so it's going to unscrew from here. We're going to take off these gray fittings too, but we're going to take off the black one first. It looks like I got it on pretty good. But so I'd say doing all these services, UV can probably be one of the most nerve-wracking things to do. There's a pair of gloves, black gloves, behind you, if you could hand me those. So whenever you're handling a bulb or a quartz sleeve, you need to wear the gloves not to damage the bulb. So after this, and now here.
Is that because of the grease on your hands? So the grease on your hands will heat the surface unevenly, and that can cause the bulb to break.
And here's where the bubble wrap comes into play. So there should be a thing of bubble wrap back there. Beautiful. I'm going to put this on the ground. Make sure that no one steps on it. And they all come in tubes that you see back there. Gray tubes. A lot of bubble wrap in them because they're very fragile. It's easy to break the bulbs. I've seen it done. I've done it myself. It's not fun. You have to break. You have to get all the glass and sometimes crystal sleeve out of there. Not fun at all. So right here, and you disconnect the bulb. Unscrew this black fitting here. And you've got the black fitting on. This is the bulb right here. But the bulb is still attached here. So what you want to do is separate this black fitting here will slide right down and right here. Thankfully it's just prongs, so these prongs attach straight to the bulb. So it may take a little bit of force, but just take it slow, take it easy, so just disconnect it. And set it on the floor here. Give yourself plenty of space. There will most likely still be some water in here when you take out the quartz sleeve. So the way that most break break these, it's really easy. You have to take it out completely straight. If you don't take it out completely straight, you take it out at an angle like that, you'll have kind of like a U-shaped crack at the end. The bulb won't be able to be used anymore, but it'll still work. Oh, I'm sorry, it won't work, but hopefully it just comes out one piece. So, real gentle, real slow, take your time. And this is a new bulb and a new sleeve, so I will not be replacing it. We're just going to take it out and put it back in. And now is where the water comes into play. So inside here we have a viewing panel. You can see the quartz sleeve kind of sits in there. It's hard to see because it is clear, and clear is kind of hard to see. But you can tell when the UV is on, it's when there's light coming out the top here. So there's like a purple light, or like a dull purple light. So now you want to take off the fitting. So at the end here, we have one. And real slow, real careful, gentle there. And although there's not water in where the bulb is, the water goes around. So when the water comes in here, it doesn't go directly past the bulb. There's a space in between the crystal sleeve and the bulb. So the light is the UV bulb, that's how it shines on the bacteria and algae. Anytime you work with a aquatic environment or aquariums, the good systems will have UV bulbs. So this is something to pay very close attention to. So we're going to take out the bulb here, which is nice and snug. This is a little more painstaking to do, so we open it up like this. And water is coming out. So not too much water, thankfully. Slowly, carefully, gently.
So it has to be pulled from the side that has the viewing.
That's, yes, so when you put it back in especially, that's how you're going to be able to tell it's bottomed out. Because if it's not bottomed out, when you put the bulb back in, or when you put the fastener on the other side in, it can crack the bulb. It's a lot longer than you might think. Anyway. Okay. So this is where the bulb, this is where the crystal sleeve is, and this is where the bulb is going to split, is going to sit. At the end, we have our caps. At the end, we have these little O-rings here. And the tighter you close this, it's going to squish the O-ring in a little bit. And that means it's going to create a watertight seal. So these are something that are also replaced as well. We have plenty of replacement kits here. I saw it in your little container back there. Normally, when it's all messed up, you might be able to see like this. If you stretch it out, go around like that. There aren't any in this one because it's a new one, but you'll be able to see really fine, really small hairline cracks. And that's how you can tell it should definitely be replaced, or that's where a leak could come from. Either way, it's a good idea to replace the O-rings every time you do a bulb change, which is once a year, so it's not often, it's not a big deal, they're easy to take out, easy to put back on. And on this side,
And you're supposed to change the port sleeve every 2 years or something?
so you don't want to cooperate with me right now, but you can see on this side, there's also a brown O-ring. Okay, nerve-wracking part a little bit because it can drop down, and it will drop down easy like that. So slowly, gently, out at an angle. Just like this. Really easy on the roll. Handed. And you can feel, once it gets down to the very end, where the quartz sleeve is. So right now I've got my finger in there, and I can feel the end of the quartz sleeve, and I'm going to help guide it out. Just like that. So now the quartz sleeve is inside the hole right there, so we won't have to worry about finding it. Once we screw this back on, you can actually see the quartz sleeve come out. The tighter I screw this back on. That being said, these are real easy because they're just going to stop when they're done tightening. And if you feel unsure when you're putting it back on, you're like, I'm not sure if this is totally tight or not, don't try to over tighten it. Just put it back on. The worst thing that can happen, it's not tight enough. Or the sleeve or the bulb or sleeve are not sitting properly in there, either way, it's not going to break it. So take it back out, be real gentle, tighten it up again. This is not something that you want to rush. This is something that you just take your time with, do it real easy, because it's going to take a lot longer to take all the glass out of there and clean it back up than it will to just take it off. And
Dumb
it's not the
question.
end of the world.
Is there a directionality to this thing? Like, if I'm working and I forget which end I took it out of, does it matter that we go the same way we came in?
So yes,
Okay.
the easiest way, I take pictures of pretty much everything.
Okay.
And I have a very simple mind, so the easiest way to remember it is we have got one big sticker here and one smaller sticker here.
Mm-hmm.
So the water is going to be flowing here and out of there. So that means that the bulb, the rounded end needs to be here.
Okay.
That's also where the light is going to come out of.
Okay.
So you can just take a picture of it when it's hanging, and every
Make
time
sure
you
that you
replace it,
repeat it.
refer back to the picture. Or
Because that is something I would definitely do.
exactly
So you
whatever.
want to put an arrow, flow.
Sure. Okay, so it's
Whatever.
coming in there and it's going out
Yes, and I don't believe the insert for the bulb of the to electrify the bulb will be long enough to reach up towards the top if you were to put it in wrong.
there. I did do that correctly, right? It's
Yep.
gonna flow that way.
But, yep. So
Thank you.
real slow, real gentle. If you go too fast or you shake around too much, you're gonna break the sleeve. So slow, gentle, goes all the way back in, and tight, and voila. Now it is time to put the bulb back in, which I guess we can do that all around. I'm going to do it back up here though. Here. Because this is where it's going to plug right back in. So, bulb, send,
Prongy
goes on
end
the
out.
outside, prongy end out, exactly. So,
Need space.
move this to the side a little bit. Alright. Flat, straight. Very much like operation. This is a pretty loose sleeve and bulb, so there's a lot of fitting. If you're hitting resistance, if it's getting hard to push in, stop. Just angle it a little differently. You're good. Nice and slow. Nice and easy. Before you put it all the way back in, you're going to reconnect. So here, again, slow, gentle. Don't hold it too strong. And then, here we go. Connected, back in, bottomed out. Back in until we hear it, feel it. Bottom. It may not hit the bottom, either way, it's not.
I felt it was something.
It may not, yeah, so it may not strongly hit the bottom, but we can put it back on. This is another thing, doesn't matter if it's too tight, or it doesn't matter if it's too loose, you can just tighten it back up. So I'm feeling good resistance here, just hand tightening it. Now, did I take the clip off to show you the screwdriver? No, how to take it off?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now there's two levels of clickiness. There are two spots where it could be sitting. There's a looser one and a tighter one. And since this is smaller until you hear 2 clicks. 2. Then going to the next hose there. Click. Back on. Nice and tight. And we're going. Don't need the gloves anymore. So we can connect this here. Quick.
The white clips, what are they called? Do they have
Snappers. There's not a real
Okay.
scientific name for them.
Okay, well-
We typically call these big guys here just clicks.
Okay.
Not very fancy. I mean,
Okay, so if I had a question about them, I would just take a picture and send it and say these things.
yeah, or
Okay.
just clicks or snappers.
Okay.
Yeah, real easy, simple to remember. Again, this guy down here is a little tighter, so wiggle it on. Last click here. And when you're doing this, just make sure this entire PVC piece down here is not glued in, which is nice because you're able to move it and detach it and everything. But if you're shaking around too much when you're down there, then it can come undone and separate, and then you're not going to get any filtration through the carbon. So you're just going to have the mechanical, and you're just going to have the biological, and these are for decoration. They are paperweights in there. So after that is done, sorry, overwrap. Is there anything I forgot that you need to turn back on to make sure that the system's going to run properly? Nope, it's not on yet. I just need to make sure everything's tight, everything's back open, because you don't want to turn the system back on and have nowhere for the water to go. Good night. It's real easy to forget about everything that you close. And then you're like, oh my God, this isn't working. Why isn't this working? And then you call your professors and they're like, oh my gosh, you nitwit, it's just these valves here. So now
That's
we
giving us
have-
a lot of credit.
Probably taking at least half an hour.
It's easy to have a second pair of eyes for everything. You'd be surprised that I'd stuck on something for half an hour and then someone else is like, that's simple right there.
Have you tried turning it on and turning it off?
Yeah. That works. That's tech support, basically.
Where is the on-off for the UV?
Right here, right label.
Okay,
it's
so
gonna say
it's-
rack UV.
So it's the underneath. No, it's the okay.
Yep. Off. And now we're gonna get plenty, since there's no water in here, we're also gonna lower the sump a little bit because we have water drain. Most of the water drain back into the sump, so it's not a big deal. But you want to keep an eye on the water level as well. So, turn it back on. We're gonna hear the air. It's gonna move down a little bit because it's getting heavier. And then, ta-da! And now's the time you want to check for leaks. You think anything's gonna pop off, you see any water coming from here. Now, this is the time to be lazy. You can just stand here for 10, 15 minutes, making sure there's no drop. One drop over a long period of time can be a real problem. So, yes, question.
You put your hand above there and show them the light that's
Yes.
shining out of the observation point.
Yes. So when the light is on and working properly, there's going to be that purple light. So you can see right there. It's kind of hard to see with the light's on. You can see that purple light. So that's how you know.
And purple one has one right up there too.
Yep. This UV bulbs are always kind of nerve-wracking. Thankfully, it will be your professors doing it. But if you work on aquatic systems in the future, this is something you are going to have to learn. This is something, if you want to get ahead in this kind of research, you need to know how to do this kind of stuff. Another thing I can't express enough, getting into filtration or aquatic systems, the types of filtration. So it's chemical, biological, and mechanical. there are different types, like you can change out carbon for another chemical filter, GFO, granular ferric oxide, you use it for phosphate control. Or mechanical media, you can have filter sumps. But that's something whenever you want to learn or even set up your own aquatic system to understand it, you need to know where the water is flowing and what type of filtrations you have in there, if it's adequate to support your life. And here we go. Any questions? Any comments?
So the switch that you clicked on does the rack pump and the UV as one?
Yep.
There's
Yeah.
no way to turn off one and not the other, or vice versa?
No,
Okay.
not with this system.
That's
Some-
fine, I just
yeah.
wanted to make sure I was understanding.
Yeah, some other systems you can have a whole bypass where you could have normally you have a ball valve with another piece of
Yeah,
plumbing,
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
just switch. What gives the power to the UV is the UV ballast switch back here, which is the tie.
That's why I think, okay.
Yep. So that's where it connects here, power, all the way back into the control. So filtration, drainage, emergencies, switches, valves, anything else? Coilios, which is just fun to say.